It's time now for the referendum debate which took place on Friday night at the Volunteer Rooms in Irvine. Taking part were Brian Donohoe, Richard Leonard, Tommy Sheridan, Fiona MacDonald. The debate was chaired by the Reverend Neil Urquhart.
Let me introduce you to our esteemed company here at the front. We have here on my left, your right, Brian Donohoe. Give him a big round of applause. And Brian, our Central Ayrshire MP for the past 24 years, has held a number of roles in his time as a parliamentarian and is currently involved in a number of cross-party groups, including the All-Party Scotch Whisky Group as Secretary, and he also chairs the All-Party Aviation Group. And on my far right, your left, we have Fiona MacDonald. Give her a big round of applause. Fiona has been a trade union activist for over 30 years and is now a member of the Public and Commercial Services Union, known as PCS. Her professional background is in adult education, specialising in adult literacy and numeracy. Fiona is speaking tonight as Vice Chair of the PCS Scotland Committee in a personal capacity. And on my far left, your right, Richard Leonard. Give him a big round of applause. Richard is the regional organiser and political officer for GMB Scotland. He has been a trade union activist for many years and recently said in an interview with the Irvine Herald that he feels privileged to have worked throughout his life with outstanding men and women who provide shining examples in their struggles for social justice. I think Sandy Clark wrote that. But Sandy Clark has been very much instrumental in setting this debate up, and so I'm very happy to quote him. And Tommy Sheridan, give him a big round of applause as well. Here he is. You got a few friends out there, Tommy. Tommy's a former socialist MSP and active campaigner across a number of issues. He's perhaps best known for his campaign work against the poll tax in the 1980s, and more recently in his role as chair of the Scottish Anti-Bedroom Tax Federation, having spoken at over 90 public meetings across Scotland on the issue. I'm Neil Urquhart. I'm minister at Fullarton Parish Church, Killy chaplain for my sins, and bad dad dancer with the Shoes Brothers. That's very kind of you, thank you. I have the role of refereeing, moderating, facilitating, chairing. You maybe could find a better way of describing it, but I'm sure tonight we're going to have a very interesting, lively, passionately debated evening. Is Scotland ready for independence is the question. And some of you are obviously well and truly decided on that, and some of you are hovering. I know I've been speaking about with folk, and there's lots of people are hovering and are not sure what they're going to vote on the 18th of September. It's for all of us tonight to debate these issues. And so, I'm going to invite the first speaker from the No campaign to come forward and give us your 5 minutes. Thank you. Who's that? Is that Richard? Give him a round of applause.
Thanks very much indeed. The first thing I want to say is that as we meet here in Ayrshire tonight, I want to begin with this point. There is a postcard in the National Library of Australia from James Keir Hardie to Andrew Fisher, from Labour's first MP living in Cumnock to Australia's first Labour Prime Minister born and bred in Cross House. Dated the 14th of December 1907, the postcard reads, "Fraternal greetings from the workers in the old homeland to their comrades in the new. The aim of our worldwide movement is the same, the economic emancipation of Earth's toiling millions." It's a message that reminds us at the start of our debate tonight that from its very beginnings, the Labour movement was not a nationalist movement, but a worldwide movement, not defined by geography, but by politics. It reminds us too that the underlying aim of the movement was not and has never been to shift power from one parliament and one set of politicians to another parliament and another set of politicians. It's to shift power from those who own the wealth back to those who, through their hard work and endeavour, create the wealth. That's the decisive struggle for us. That's the real division in society, not between England and Scotland, but the division between working people and the idle rich. And let me say this, the coalition government and its attempts to destroy the NHS in England, to dismantle the welfare state right across the UK, has nothing to do with their Englishness and everything to do with their Tory ideology. These attacks are not anti-Scottish, they are anti-working class. Now, we will hear tonight that a yes vote in September will mean we will never again have a Tory government running Scotland. But the plan before us is the opposite. Scotland's interest rates, exchange rates, inflation targets, growth targets, employment targets, public debt ratios will be set by the rest of the UK at the very point Scottish representation is being withdrawn. This isn't more independence, it's less. It's claimed in the White Paper that if we vote no, I quote, decisions about Scotland would remain in the hands of others. But that's precisely what will happen if we vote yes. We might not have an elected Tory government in Scotland, but we'll have an unelected Tory government that we can't vote out running our economy. And if you believe, like I do, that the existing economic model is not working, that it needs fundamental change, then we demand an economy of the people, run for the people, by the people, not by the Jim Ratcliffes of this world. Then we need to act at the level where economic power lies. The commanding heights of the Scottish economy are now dominated by wholly owned subsidiaries of the London Stock Exchange. By last year, the Scottish Government's own figures showed that fewer than 18% of all big businesses in Scotland were Scottish-owned. That's not to talk Scotland down, it's to talk the hard facts of the Scottish economy today. And we can't willfully ignore those facts. Because if we are serious about wanting to put people before profit, if we are serious about meaningful jobs for all, if we are serious about extending public ownership, if we seriously want to redistribute power as well as wealth, then we have to intervene at the level where that economic power rests, not walk away from it. Because I accept that political power with no economic power can buy you a few things, but it will not challenge that fundamental division in society that we need to tackle. So it's not a yes vote, it's a no vote in September that presents us with the opportunity for a different path. Useful work, not useful toil. Dignity in retirement. Not just managing the economy, but fundamentally changing the economy and so building an equal society on human need, not private greed. That's what we should be concentrating on. That's the vision we should be promoting to give hope to our young people. Not an exclusive concern for Scotland and Scotland alone. Not the competitive form of nationalism the SNP mean, but a vision of social justice, of common humanity and basic human rights the world over. Because there are too many national boundaries, not too few. Because now more than ever, we need greater unity, not more division. And that's why I'm here tonight calling for a no vote in September. Not a no vote for the status quo, but a no vote for the real alternative.
Thank you, Richard. Now, who's going to speak first? Fiona, from the Yes campaign.
I'm very pleased to be here tonight and to have the chance to talk to you about why I believe that you have to vote yes. Not just yes, the SNP yes, but the yes that's about socialism and an independent Scotland. I want to just take a wee look back at the crash of 2008 and the response of the government to that and what they did to working class people who'd never caused the crisis in the first place. Let's remember that it was Gordon Brown who attacked civil servants and stated that 104,000 of their jobs would need to go in the first round of cuts to make savings. I was a Labour Prime Minister. With the change of government in 2010, when the condemned government took power, the picture for working class people worsened. I'm a member of the Public and Commercial Services Union. It's an independent union. We're not affiliated to any political party, and that means our union represents our views. PCS isn't run by unelected bureaucrats. It's run by people like me, ordinary representatives, who have challenged the narrative that the cuts weren't obvious, necessary, or the only solution to the deficit. We set out an alternative vision to the cuts agenda. We showed that the benefits cheats were a tiny, tiny minority. In fact, tax evasion costs 15 times more than benefit fraud. Rich people, however, are enormous cheats. They evade, avoid paying tax, and if it was collected, we could pay off the deficit today. It makes you wonder why they are cutting the jobs of those who collect the tax. My PCS colleagues in UK departments are being hounded by their employer. Pickles has withdrawn their trade union facilities time, meaning reps can't have union meetings in the workplace, email, make a call, or even carry out personal cases. It's obvious they are attacking PCS reps because they're effective negotiators. They've taken action and they've been able to stop some of the worst attacks on civil servants. And because we have said that no cuts are necessary, they are definitely after us. In response to the UK government, are trying to smash our union by cutting our source of income, knowing that more than 95% of our members pay their union dues through the pay system we know as check-off. They have said they're going to stop it. So what have we done in response? PCS took Eric Pickles to court as it was a contractual right of members to pay their dues in this way. We were victorious. He cost the UK taxpayer £90,000 in the process. But in this unprecedented and politically motivated attack, Pickles has written to every government department telling them to end the check-off arrangement, ignoring the rule of the court and the contractual rights of our members. If necessary, he will change contracts to ensure that he succeeds. Contrast this with the approach of Scottish Cabinet Minister John Swinney, who has recently honoured the relationship between trade unions and the Scottish Government and its agencies. Swinney has said that he has no intention of ending check-off. He has just approved a new partnership deal with Scottish Government unions. At our special consultative conference on the independence referendum that we held in Glasgow on Saturday, the Deputy First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, made the promise that under an independent Scotland, UK departments would share in the same conditions as their Scottish Government counterparts. They would have a no compulsory redundancy guarantee, honour the facilities times arrangements for trade union reps, guarantee work for every civil servant that currently works in Scotland. And at that conference, our union took a historic and democratic decision following an in-depth consultation with members. 50 branches came from all over Scotland, representing 90% of our membership. With a mandate from the branch through huge discussions in debates within their branches, they made the decision that PCS should campaign on the industrial issues with all sides of the debate, inform members, hold hustings and continue to involve them in how they're going to vote in September the 18th.
1 minute to go.
However, the big story of the day was that absolutely not one single branch voted for no. That is damning indictment of the Better Together campaign, not one branch for no. I want to appeal to you now to vote yes. You will never have the opportunity again in your lifetime to make a decision that will have such a profound and life-changing effect on you, your family and your communities. This decision isn't about an allegiance to a political party. It's not even about Tory rule or Home Rule. It's about thinking what is best for your class rather than your country. Socialists believe that if we nationalised our oil, our utilities, Grangemouth, a socialist creating green jobs under the control of workers, we could create a vision of a socialist world that could change the lives of millions, not just here in this country, but all over the world. That is why I'm asking you, unlike the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, Joanne Lamont, who said that Scots don't have the genetic capacity to make decisions, make that decision yourselves. Vote yes. I believe in the working class. I believe in our intelligence, skills and abilities. I believe that sometimes in our lives we have to take a deep breath and take a leap of faith. believe that we in this room, the working class of this country, can deliver a better world than that bunch of millionaire bully boys down in London. All you have to do is say yes, yes in the belief that another world is possible, yes that we have the intellectual capacity, yes that we have the political strength. Are we ready for independence? I strongly believe yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Brian, on behalf of the No.
Well, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to congratulate the Irvine Herald and the Irvine Beat for organising the event tonight, and for you for coming along tonight. I have to say to you, I'm not very interested in those who have already made up their mind. I'm targeting what I'm about to say at those who are still undecided. And I say that on the basis that it's a case that it's clear to those that we've got to look at what's in this supposed white paper that's the offer in front of the people of Scotland to decide on the 18th of September itself. Now, the white paper records that 16% of all those in the private sector workers in Scotland are employed by companies
Brian,
whose ownership rests
just stop there, please.
Britain.
Folks, we want to hear all the speakers, please. Okay? So, can we please have a bit of respect? If you're not going to show respect, can you please just leave? Right, well, if you're going to carry on like that, we'll just call it a day. Is that what you want? Is that what everybody wants? Right, will you please give the chance for people to speak at the front? There will be the chance for the other side to give their views as well in response to what is being said here. Please, can you just show a bit of respect?
Thanks, Neil. You're starting to sound like the Speaker in the House of Commons. The white paper records that 16% of all private sector workers in Scotland are employed by companies whose ownership rests outside Britain. In fact, 34% of all private sector employees work for companies which are owned outside Scotland. For bigger enterprises, that is those employing more than 250 people, which generate 64.5% of all turnover in the Scottish economy and therefore represent the major engines of economic development. 64% work for companies ultimately owned outside Scotland itself. Many of them are either London Stock Exchange quoted companies or subsidiaries of overseas owned multinational companies. So the SNP's blueprint for independence in economic terms doesn't provide for greater independence, it actually provides for rather less. Those on the left of Scottish politics who believe that a yes vote would create the conditions for an immaculate conception of socialism are misplacing their faith, not only because of the interpretation of the referendum result and the negotiations that would ensue after that would put in the hands of those who want a radical economic and social transformation further away, rather than in the hands of those who are and do not want that. But also because working people in Scotland would lose, not gain, the opportunity to organise and intervene at the level where economic power lies today. The White Paper's feeble offer to consider different ownership models for the rail network, for instance, is a very weak prospectus, made only worse by the fact that there's a declaration that if the SNP government has its way, the existing rail franchises, including the new 10-year franchise for ScotRail, will go through unchallenged in 2015. I support taking that franchise into public ownership and have made my views known within the Labour Party itself. Of course, in response to this and other debates arising from the White Paper, the Labour Party itself must regain its vitality, focusing not simply on what it would do in power, but what it can do in opposition. And it must campaign in Parliament, but it also must agitate outside too. One clear and intelligent message is the Yes campaign's economic case simply lacked credibility that did not weaken the demand for pursuit and popularisation of a credible case for change stemming from a no vote. A demand that must be met not after the the 18th of September, but well before it. Now, the undecided people have to make up their minds what the advantages of the union have been and will be if there's a no vote. I would argue that it would remain that there would be a place at the top level of politics across the world with world leaders, which would be missing if Scotland were to go in itself. There would be a base, and is a base, for investment to do business in the UK. There's a strong marketplace. There's social justice that isn't there in other countries in the world. There's a stability that would not be there in a separate Scotland initially. There's a strong defence of the realm in the Scottish and the UK-wide base. A strong currency, which today we call the pound. A united kingdom, not a fragmented one. Those who are on offer looking at the yes vote, there is the uncertainties that it's creating.
1 minute.
It's a fragmented and diminishing marketplace, and there's no control over the currency offered. A wish list without any real answers to the white paper is like a fairy tale. There's more centralisation in the Scottish Government than there is anywhere in the democratic world that I know. And there's an uncertain membership of Europe. I have no wish whatsoever to see the Union Jack ripped up to satisfy the narrow interests of those like Alex Salmond, and I say to you to vote no on 18th of September to secure a certain future for our very proud nation.
Thank you, Brian. Over to you, Tommy.
Brothers and sisters, we've got 5 minutes and there's so much to say, so I'm going to speak a wee bit faster than normal because I really want to try and take up some of the points that have been made already. Credibility was used an awful lot by Brian. Credibility. And he had the cheek to talk about the railways being in private hands. For 13 years we had a Labour government and they never took the railways back into public ownership. How dare he talk about credibility? For 13 years we had a Labour government with a majority in Westminster. What happened to the gas? What happened to the electricity? What happened to everything else that was stolen by Thatcher and her cronies? They never took anything back. He talks about certainty. We cannot, those of us that are arguing for us to take this opportunity to stand up on our own 2 feet and be a nation, we cannot dot every I. We cannot cross every T. We cannot give you certainty. The only certainty is that if you vote no, you're going to get more cuts, more austerity, more job losses. That's the reality. That's the only certainty. We have got a situation where we're told here that we shouldn't be narrow nationalists. As if standing up on your own 2 feet and realising your destiny to be a nation makes you a narrow nationalist. Richard talked about socialism being international, and he's right. One of the greatest ever socialists that Scotland ever raised was John Maclean, who stood for a Scottish workers' republic, but was one of the best internationalists the world has ever known, was made the first commissar of the Soviet Union, the first socialist state. And I would say to Richard and anyone else in the Labour movement that talks about voting yes makes you a narrow nationalist. The only thing that's nationalist is voting no, because it makes you a British nationalist rather than a Scottish nationalist. That's the reality. This debate is not about the SNP. It's not about any one politician, Alex Salmond or anybody else. This debate is much bigger and much more important than Alex Salmond or the SNP. This debate is about whether your kids are going to grow up in a country where they get the government they vote for instead of getting governments through Westminster that are foisted upon them. Think of one thing One thing alone in relation to the bedroom tax. A vile, pernicious attack on the poorest and the disabled in our society. Brothers and sisters, 91% of Scotland's political representatives voted against the bedroom tax. But we still had the bedroom tax foisted upon us. Come on! What is the nature of Scotland? Scotland has communitarian values. Scotland believes in public services owned by the public. Scotland believes in a public health service. Scotland believes in a public mail service which is going down the Swanee as soon as you vote no, because they've already agreed to privatise it. We have an opportunity here, don't we? We know the type of Scotland we're capable of building. A Scotland that does put people first. A Scotland that says, 2 weeks ago, when the Westminster government announced they're going to spend £2.5 billion buying 14 new super-duper fighter jets. We say, when you've got 51% of the Wains living in poverty in Springburn and Glasgow, we're not spending £2.5 billion on fighter jets. We believe those of us in the yes camp, we believe we have a vision
1 minute.
of a better Scotland. A Scotland that says to Westminster that wants to spend £100 billion in a new set of nuclear weapons. No, we're not spending £100 billion on nuclear weapons. We're spending it and improving the pension. We're spending it and improving the minimum wage. We're spending it and raising our kids out of poverty. That's the type of Scotland we're going to build, for God's sake. We've got more pandas in Scotland and we've got elected Tories. That should tell you the type of Scotland that we're going to have if we vote yes. That's why this debate, brothers and sisters, this debate is about hope over fear. All you get from the yes campaign is to try and frighten you not to have the courage on the 18th of September to stand up and be counted for you and all of your family and to make this country one of the best, small, socially just nations on our planet. Please vote yes.
Thank you, Tommy. And thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Richard, for your passionate presentations. So it's over to the floor. What about question? Question to either camps.
Aye, it's a question for the no camp. What's going to happen to the sick and disabled if we vote no?
What's going to happen to the sick and disabled if we vote no? It's the no camp.
You want two questions at the one time, or one question at each? I can answer the question. There's no problem in that. Nothing will change as far as the disabled and the people who are handicapped are concerned. Nothing will happen in terms of a vote that will say that you maintain yourself in the strength of the union. That's clear, and that's the case as it is.
Okay.
Does that mean, Brian, that you're going to keep ATOS and keep people going through hell when they get these letters through the door?
No, certainly not. Absolutely not.
Okay, another question. Right, here's one just before I get someone whose hand is up, because we got you to fill in questions and we're going to ask some of these. Is the comparison between Scotland and Norway helpful? Either side. Tommy?
I think it is helpful because Norway is an example of a small country with less population than us that is very economically successful. In relation to all of the economic indicators, they're considered to be the fourth richest country in the world. In terms of the indicators of happiness, they're second in the world. The UK's 16th. We have a situation where they have a natural resource in relation to oil. We've got more than that. We've got more oil than them, and we've got more natural resources as well. What the Yes camp have to get to grips with is even the economic movers and shakers, Standard & Poor's, have said that an independent Scotland without oil would still have a AAA rating because of its economic capacity in manufacturing and elsewhere. That's a reality. That's a reality. With oil and gas, we're even higher. Without it, we are still a viable economic nation, and that's a fact.
Thank you very much. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I've never taken the view that if people voted yes in the referendum, that the sky would come crashing down and the lights would go out. I think there is an argument that says that you could have a sustainable, independent, separate state of Scotland. What I'm arguing is, if you want the big changes that I think you need, if you want to capture control of the levers of economic power, you would be withdrawing from the opportunity to do that if you voted yes. So I want to build a different Scotland. I want to build a different Britain. I want to build a different world. But you've got to intervene at the level where the power is. And Tommy walking away from the levers of power which exist. People tonight need to understand, Tommy is not going to be the first Prime Minister of Scotland. It's going to be Alex Salmond if it's a yes vote. And he's got very different...
Okay.
And he's got very different priorities to Tommy. Alex Salmond wants to cut corporation tax by 3 pence in the pound more than whatever George Osborne would do. They're his priorities. And let me just make my final point to the whole audience.
Final point.
Let me just make my final point to the whole audience. In what sense is it disgraceful? Because you don't agree with me?
Okay, I'm going to tell you why it's disgraceful. There are many comments you are making about the SNP are accurate. But you see, the problem is that the referendum is not about whether you're going to SNP. It's about whether you're going to take control of your own life. That's the first thing. I would also ask you to consider something.
Can you just sit down, please? Just sit down.
I just want to ask him a question.
Please just sit down. No. Sit down. Thank you. Please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. Okay. Right. I'll use my card here. Let's see. We've got, if the result is no, we were told in the news today that Labour would bring forward a Devo Max offer. What would Labour be offering? Is that right? I'm just assuming.
No, I don't think you can assume that automatically.
You tell us if it's not right.
Well, as I understand the situation, Douglas Alexander, the Shadow Foreign Minister, is making a speech at Glasgow University tonight where he is making the argument for greater devolution of powers, including income tax, for example, to the Scottish Parliament. But
so I'll just stop you there, Richard. Yeah. Please, I know that you're really passionate. You're full of what you believe is right. But please let the speakers speak and let them be heard. Okay? I want to give everybody a chance. You know, I'm not on anybody's side here. I'm trying to facilitate. I'm trying to enable a reasonable debate to happen here tonight. And if we just have folk shouting the way they're shouting, we're not going to get anywhere. Please, would you please help me here? Okay? Please. So let's hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Yeah. So he's making a speech tonight where he's calling for greater devolution of powers, but he's making it in the context of an internal Labour Party discussion and debate, which will come to a conclusion at the Scottish Labour Party conference in 3 weeks' time in Perth. So in 3 weeks' time, you will know what the Labour Party's plans are on further devolution.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Yep.
If we can cut to the real truth here, isn't it the case that Labour knows full well that without Scottish votes and without Scottish MPs, it can never win another election in Westminster? And isn't it the case that Labour are putting Scottish Labour before the Scottish people? That's the real motivation behind the Better Together campaign. How you can be in bed with these people is beyond me.
Ian, that's not true, and you know it's not true. The Labour government were formed throughout the period that I've been in Parliament, but on the basis of English votes and not Scottish votes alone.
Why does the laws go and to the actual gagging law to remove for civil rights of speech? Why do you go in bed with them?
We're not in bed with anybody. You've got free speech tonight, and you're making very good use of it, I'm sure.
Okay, right. I'll get to you. I'll get to you, folk at the back. I'm looking. Folk, excuse me, friends at the back. Just give me a break, okay? I'm trying to spread the debate here.
Spread the debate. That's what it is about. It's a debate.
Yes. And so I'm looking for someone who's not decided yet. I'm looking for someone who's not decided yet. Which side? I want a reasonable, straightforward question. Who's that?
I think people are gone.
You got a question, though? Right. I'm looking for a question. Okay.
Where's the guarantees that Scotland won't get to keep the pound? These are just scare tactics. That man standing up there is saying that he's not targeting people that are already made up because he's trying to bully them into voting yes with these scare tactics, saying that we're not going to get to keep the pound. We've not got enough oil and stuff like that. It's ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's just bullying tactics.
So is it bullying tactics?
Well, I don't see it as that, I'll be honest with you. It's a fact of life. And it beggars belief to think for a minute that if you're in a separate nation, that you can tie yourself to another country's currency without it in some way or other being in the responsibility of you. It's just not possible. The Bank of England will take that responsibility, and Scotland will have to be part of that in terms of the position as it exists, and will have no say in how you set any of the targets as far as that's concerned.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Fiona or Tommy?
I think it's very, very important for everyone to understand that the enormity of what we're looking at here in September. We're looking at the breakup of one of the oldest, biggest imperialist nations in the planet. This nation used to have 2/3 of the world underneath its banner. It used to rule 2/3 of the planet. It is very, very powerful. What we are planning to do is break it. They are responding by throwing the kitchen sink at us. They are trying to frighten you around the currency. They're trying to frighten you in relation to oil and gas. And you know what's really, really stomach-churning? If this was Cuba, Nicaragua, Palestine, that was being bullied by a big neighbour, people like Brian and Richard would be attacking the bully instead of being on the side of the bully. That's the reality.
Okay. Here's another question.
You're behind it, sir.
I don't support the Queen, the pound, the common market, keeping Trident, or any of the other things that's been suggested, and I'm still going to vote yes. I'm voting yes because the Labour Party and the Labour Party and the trade unions have had a chance to solve some of the issues that we've been talking about tonight, and they've done nothing.
13 years.
We've gave them the chance. All over the world, people are saying the system's broken and we need to change it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm looking for a republic, socialist republic. After the 18th, we're looking for a constitution that holds our elected representatives to account. And when they get the jobs and they go down to the Parliament, if they don't do it, they'll be sacked, because we're not going to put up with these MPs making a fortune.
Can you give me your question, please?
Would somebody like to comment on the written constitution of what I've just said?
Yeah.
Richard?
I'd like to say something.
Well, you're probably not going to like my answer, but my answer is this. What's on offer on the 18th of September is the Scottish Government's White Paper, which includes a commitment to membership of NATO, which includes a commitment to the European Union membership, which includes keeping the monarchy as the head of state, which includes keeping the pound. Now, on the pound, just let me say this. We can't have it all ways. The corollary of self-determination for Scotland, of standing up in Scotland's interests, has got to be, after that process, if it's a yes vote, the rest of the UK will want to stand up for its own interests. And on the currency, the interests are different. Because 70% of all Scotland's trade is with the rest of the UK, whereas only 10% of the rest of the UK's trade is with Scotland. So the perspectives on the currency are different. I've attended quite a number of these meetings where I've heard time and time again members of the Yes campaign saying we'll adopt the pound as the currency on day one. On day one, with the clear inference that after that it'll change. You can't enter into a currency union on that basis. Nobody in the right minds would enter into a currency union on that basis. And that's why people like Jim Sillars call it stupidity on stilts, and he's right.
Fiona?
Yeah, I want to come back on that. Thanks for asking that question about, and it's really about the support that the trade unions have been given. You're right. PCS has been standing alone in this battle for quite some time. There's individuals within trade unions, on the ground. We've been arguing for coordinated strike action for years at the TUC. I've gone down there year after year, hoping that the TUC will be supported by the Labour Party, get up off its knees and give us a general strike to tell the Tories in the government about how they're bringing the working class to their knees. And you know what? We fought a lonely battle over our pensions. Gordon Brown was the one that started to rip us off for our pensions. He never gave one, they never lifted one hand of support. The Labour-led unions haven't lifted one hand of support to us. They're looking at all the public services and all the council services are all been... The whole thing has been ripped up in front of our eyes. We're in a situation down south where we've got clinics run by Virgin. I mean, for God's sake, what is going on? We can go in there and get our phone, our telly, and maybe they can do our teeth when we're in there. I mean, it is totally ridiculous what's going on in the National Health Service down there. And to some extent, we are buffeted from that. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no cuts happening up here, because that would be disingenuous to say that. But the fact of the matter is that the TUC have not supported ordinary workers.
OK, thanks, Fiona.
Hi there, it's for Mr Donohoe. Question. As one of the top 5 claimants of expenses between 2010 to 2012, I was just going to ask, would a no vote be the end of the expenses gravy train?
Well, it has already. So there's no gravy train in the House of Commons anymore.
No wonder you're laughing.
The fact is that we put it to the vote in the House of Commons to make it that an independent parliamentary scheme would be brought into place. That's in place now. They've taken decisions. They've presented it as such, as being a package that has been valued by them as being about the true level to pay the wage, to pay the conditions of service that we employ. I don't know if there would be very much difference between that and what would happen in an independent Scotland, to be honest with you. It's clearly not a question that would make very much difference, be either a yes vote or a no vote in that sense.
Thank you, Brian. Yes?
Can I ask a question?
Sorry, Fiona.
Can I ask a question of Brian? You say
is it in relationship to this?
Yes, it's in relationship. It's on the same question. If it came to the bit that you had to stand in a worker's wage, the average worker's wage, Brian, would you stand for that? I would.
Well, that's a matter for the individual to determine.
Would you, yes or no, Brian?
I would.
Would you stand on a worker's wage?
That's
what Tommy Sheridan did in the Parliament.
Let me answer the question.
Let him answer the question, please.
I tell you, I've been a trade union organiser as well as an MP for a number of years. Indeed, all of my working life, I've stood up for the rights of workers. And I believe for the right thing to have is the rate for the job. I've always argued that is the case, and I always will. And if you don't want to have that as a situation, then that's for you to determine yourself. But as far as I'm concerned, standing up for workers means standing up for the rate for the job, and that I will continue to do for the rest of my working life as well.
Thanks, Brian. Here's a question Before I get one from the floor, here's one that you've written down. In what ways could an independent Scotland be a more equal, fairer and more just country than it already is as a part of the UK? This is someone from Dorai. You want to speak first, Tommy?
I think it's important to keep repeating the point that has been made several times tonight, but the no side keep ignoring. And that is that the referendum on the 18th of September is not about the SNP's white paper. The referendum on the 18th of September is about an independent Scotland that you and me and everyone in Scotland can shape, because there will be elections in 2016. I don't know where Richard gets the idea that Alex Salmond will automatically be your First Minister. There will be elections in 2016. We will be able to vote for the politicians, and I say this to the Labour Party. I think the best thing that could happen to the Labour Party is independence, because it will rejuvenate that party. And perhaps then, when someone from the Labour Party gets up to quote Keir Hardie, they won't be laughed at, because Keir Hardie believed in home rule passionately. And when we have independence, the Labour Party in Scotland can stand again for social justice, for public ownership, for higher minimum wage, for workers' rights, instead of being led by the nose, by the south east of the Labour Party that are nothing more than the Tories Mark II. That's the reality, and that's the difference independence can make.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Tommy. Let's allow Richard to give his say, please.
Yeah, I mean, I accept, Tommy, that John McLean called for all hail the Scottish Workers' Republic. I accept that. But you can't try and pretend that Keir Hardie wanted separatism, a separate state for Scotland, because he didn't. He wanted home rule, continuing to send representatives to Westminster. And he was the MP for Merthyr Tydfil and West Ham South, wasn't he? Yeah. And this idea that you just condemn people because they're from the southeast of England. 44 out of 74 London MPs are Labour MPs. So don't try.
They're the new Tories.
Well, if you think that Jeremy Corbyn and John MacDonald are Tories, I'm surprised, because I know, like me,
you mentioned 44. Do you want to mention the other 42?
You shared platforms. You shared platforms with them. But I'm sorry, Tommy. You can say what you like about the white paper being irrelevant. It's highly relevant. The white paper will form the basis of any negotiations that take place if there's a yes vote. And if I could say to you, let me just read you something, a quotation from the SNP conference when the SNP debated and decided to take membership of NATO as their policy. Yeah. Bruce Crawford said in that debate, he says, there are, of course, others with a legitimate view of how an independent Scotland would look. We should respect their views, give them the space to articulate them, but make no mistake, it will be the SNP view that will predominate. And it will be the SNP view that the vast majority of the people will hear.
So you accept
Richard?
that, Richard? So
okay.
Richard now accepts everything SNP says. There you go.
No.
Okay.
Marvellous.
I'm coming over here. Don't worry, lads. Here's a question. First of all, for Tommy.
Hi there. Tommy, we know that capitalism migrates to the lowest tax, least regulatory environment. How do you plan on having your socialist workers' utopia of high tax, high public spending, a highly regulated environment in Scotland, when our Westminster government will ensure a low tax, low regulation, low public spending south of the border? Surely the natural conclusion of this is that poor people in an independent Scotland will suffer worst, because as the big businesses drive Westminster into a reverse auction with Holyrood, where the first person to zero wins the prize on who can offer more subsidy, lower corporation tax, ensuring an ever more impoverished public purse, and the people that suffer for that most are poor and working class people.
Tommy?
The premise of your question, brother, is very misplaced. If you look across the whole of Europe, and I'm no apologist for capitalism, but if you look across the whole of Europe and you compare the child poverty rates in the likes of Sweden, Norway, Finland, with that in the UK it's over 22%. In each of those other countries, it's less than 5%. In each of those countries, they have higher personal tax rates than we have in the UK. They have higher corporation tax rates than we have in the UK. So your economic argument is completely torn asunder. It doesn't add up, brother.
But
you can have high tax. If you let me finish, Brian, you can have high corporation tax, you can have high personal tax, and you can have high productivity. Productivity is what drives the economy, and you can have all of that here in Scotland with high productivity. I don't support cutting corporation tax here in Scotland, and the people of Scotland might not support it either. But I'll tell you what, the people of Scotland will decide it if they vote for independence, not Westminster.
But in Norway, it has to be said, they have the highest prices of anywhere in Europe as a consequence of the fact that they have what they have. That's the problem that you have with your argument, Tommy. They have high prices as well as a high cost in terms of taxation.
They've got high prices. They've got high prices, Brian. They are in the economic indicators across the planet. They are the country with the second highest personal satisfaction in the whole of the world. Along with their high prices, they've got high wages and high standards of public services.
Not in the Norway I know, I have to tell you, and I've been there several times.
You've probably travelled a lot more than me.
Right, folks, let's move on. Right, folks, let's move on to another question. I'm just coming to you, mate. All right. Here's a question related to the Daily Mail and the Royal Bank.
Well, the thing is that the no vote have got some strange bedfellows called the Scottish Daily Mail. Because on Monday, the Scottish Daily Mail are telling the Scottish people that if we vote yes, there's 30,000 jobs going to be lost if we vote for an independent Scotland. But then, of course, yesterday morning in the Scottish Daily Mail, somewhere in the middle of the paper, what we discover is that the Royal Bank of Scotland has lost £8.2 billion in one financial year, their last financial year. So that type of absolute skullduggery are in the no campaign. And can the no campaign reassure us, right, that what the Scottish Daily Mail are saying is no, you vote no and we'll keep the 30,000 jobs.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, can I answer that? Because, let's have a mature discussion about this. Let's have a mature... Okay, well, because the point I'm going to make to you is this.
Listen, folks, come on.
Constitutional referendums throw up some very strange bedfellows. Frankly, Tommy's in the same bed as Rupert Murdoch on this question. Second...
Come on, folks. Come on. Listen up. Listen up.
Secondly, if you look back through history, I'm reminded Tony Benn was in the same campaign as Enoch Powell. They were the two leading lights in the 75 Common Market referendum. So let's be grown up about it and understand that on a constitutional question you will get strange bedfellows. And I'm certainly not. I read the Morning Star, not the Daily Mail, so give us a break.
Fiona, do you want to... Excuse me, please. Come on. We're trying to listen to a debate here. Okay. Do you want to say anything in response? Fiona? No, you're quite okay. That's all right. Let's move on here. Here's another question.
Hi there, I'd like to ask Mr Donohoe, you stated there'd been certainty about Scotland remaining in Europe. Well, this is only coming from the UK government. They are the people who are saying this. No European country, despite what's been claimed by the British government and the Labour establishment, have stated Scotland would not be welcome. First and foremost, we already are in Europe, 40 years members already. There is no precedent to remove a country or a people out of Europe. What will happen is, as the SNP have stated, if a yes vote comes, we will negotiate as a separate state. I might remind you, Mr Donohoe, and your friends in London, if Scotland is ejected, so will what's left of the UK, i.e. England.
Well, I mean, you've got that argument wrong, because, of course, there is...
Of course I have. I'm in the yes camp. Of course I'm wrong.
Hang on a minute. Well, it's not because of that. It's because of the facts of the position that you're trying to take. The fact is that the President of Spain has said that he would not allow... Now, wait a minute. Come on. You're saying... You're asking in the one
and that
point...
would be nothing to do with
Catalonia. You can't get it any other way, you know.
That's nothing...
You can't...
Folks, come on, listen up. I'm going to give my friend here a chance to come back. Listen up to Brian, then we'll hear what this chap has to say. Okay, Brian.
Well, I mean, as I've just said, the fact is that what you stated was that there wasn't a country in Europe that was opposed to the idea that Scotland could get back into the European economy and into the European community. The fact is that the President of Spain has said just that. And that is one of the countries in the common market that can actually veto the idea that there would be an automatic entrance to the common market. Now, I know that there are those, myself included, that have got doubts about the common market itself. But the fact is that come the 18th of September, as it's been said already, as far as the SNP are concerned, and they would be the ones, if there's a yes vote, that will be in the position to negotiate, they think it's automatic. I don't think it is. And at that point, I think there has to be an understanding that there is a problem for Scotland, as there is for the rest of the United Kingdom.
Just to come back to you, Mr Donohoe, I read what the Spanish President said. He did not, and I categorically say he did not state they would veto Scotland. What they stated was, as in the difference, because somebody made the comparison between Scotland and Catalonia, which is not naturally Spanish interest. What he said was, and I state, and please listen carefully, folks in the hall, what he said, the UK Constitution allows for a referendum to be held in Scotland. The Spanish Constitution does not allow. That is the first difference. The second difference, he stated that Spain would respect, like any other country, a democratic decision if Scotland voted yes. We are in Europe, we will be in Europe. The greatest threat to Scotland in Europe is containing with the UK, who in 2017, irrespective of the Labour vote in Scotland, which is the pits, no disrespect meant, the southeast of England will vote Scotland, Wales and the Midlands all out. So what's your answer to that?
The answer stays the same. I mean, there's no difference to what I'm saying. The fact is there's an uncertainty there that isn't there at present. We are full members of the European Parliament and the whole of the structures of Europe as it stands. I don't know what Tommy's view is as far as Europe is concerned, but I know as far as SNP are concerned, they believe it's possible. I don't, and I'll stick to that as a point of view.
I'm going to give some chance at the front here. Let's see, in the event, something written down here, in the event of a yes vote, would it not be sensible to have a plan B in place if Westminster refuses to let us continue to use the pound? The Yes campaign seems to think Osborne is bluffing.
Well, I think it's very important to underline yet again, because we keep having to repeat it, this is not about whether you support SNP. It's not about whether you support Alex Salmond. You would have to be blind not to recognise that the SNP have done a job in bringing independence onto the agenda. You would have to be blind. You would have to be willfully blind not to recognise that in both the 2007 and the 2011 Scottish general elections, the party that stood on the left of centre political programme to get rid of nuclear weapons, to oppose illegal wars in Iraq, to keep public services public, to get rid of the council tax in 2007. The party that stood on the left of centre agenda was not the Labour Party. It was SNP, and that's why they won both of those elections. The Labour Party
here in Scotland, across the UK as well, but we're talking about Scotland just now, the Labour Party has lost its way. That's a reality. We would not, I would make this prediction, we would probably not be having this debate if the Labour Party had used its 13 years in power to do what Richard is asking us to put faith in, to tackle the levers of power. Well, why didn't you tackle the levers of power when you had 13 years to do it? What will happen on September 18th is you will either vote yes or no. If you vote yes, there will then be a political rejuvenation across Scotland in the next 2 years thereafter, where various parties will either get their act together in relation to Labour, or perhaps the trade unions in Scotland will get their act together and build a new vehicle that actually represents the trade union and the ordinary working man and woman. But what will happen in 2016 is you will have the opportunity to choose from the manifestos of each of the political parties. And quite frankly, I've got to say to you, I hope there will be a political manifesto that says the people of Scotland should decide whether we stay in or out of Europe.
Richard?
I hope they will decide whether we keep the pound or develop our own currency. I hope they will say we should be looking at not cutting corporation tax for big oil companies, but taking our oil into public ownership, which most other oil-producing countries in the world do. That's the agenda. That's the agenda which will be on offer. And quite frankly, none of us here know whether the people of Scotland will vote for that agenda or not, because that will be the democratic wish of ordinary folk.
Richard? Thank you.
Yeah, well, there you have it.
Richard?
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of things. First of all of us on this platform need to have a bit of humility, because we've all suffered electoral defeats over the last decade, and we need to face up to that. We need to face up to that. Now, I'm sorry, I don't think John Swinney, as Fiona was suggesting earlier on, is some Damascus-converted socialist that's doing all the right things. I don't think he is. He refuses to back a 50p income tax rate. In 2007, an election Tommy referred to, the SNP's main headline was that they were promising people, by introducing a local income tax in place of the council tax, the biggest tax cut for Scots in a generation, harking back to Nigel Lawson's 1988 budget. So I don't accept that the SNP are somehow any kind of left-wing party, because they're not. They're not a redistributionist party. If you don't believe me, look at the council tax freeze, which rewards the most to the richest people in the biggest houses. That's not socialism. That's not redistribution. That's actually looking after the vested interests of richer people, not poorer people. So let's have a bit of humility. The other thing I just need to say is this. I'm not saying that I preach the gospel of Bruce Crawford. Far from it. But it would be fair to observe that in history, when there has been a movement for change, whether it's Solidarity in Poland, whether it's the Congress Party in India, whether it's Václav Havel in Czechoslovakia, the leaders of those movements become the governments for the next 2 terms at least. And I'm predicting, and I say this with no relish as a Labour Party member, but I'm predicting that if there's a yes vote, it won't be Tommy, it won't be any left-wing party, it'll be a right-wing SNP party cutting corporation tax that will be running Scotland, and it won't have its hands on any of the significant levers of economic power.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Okay, here's another question, my friend.
Thank you. Excuse me, could I just, I want to make a point and ask a question. Could I say, I think it's ridiculous. I watched a debate the other night between Nicola Sturgeon and John Lamont, and you know, it's worse in here than it was there. People, I don't agree with most of what said, but I want to listen, and they're right, and this brings me to a crucial issue. 25 or so years ago, I would have been in a no camp, because I was concerned, and worried that I might have to distance myself from my working class brothers and sisters down south. Then I came to realise that's not the case. I don't have to. In fact, we can help each other and we can support each other even more. But what I want us to consider, because we're told that this company will no invest in Scotland if it votes yes, and that company will take their money away, and so on and so forth, then I think, as I've said before, here's this wee country, Scotland, that gave the world steam, that drove the Industrial Revolution. We gave the world modern engineering. We gave the world television, telephones. We gave the world penicillin, antiseptics, so on and so forth. We even gave the world a cure for a condition called Helicobacter pylori. I don't know if you know anything about it. An Australian doctor got the credit, but it was a young doctor in the Royal Infirmary that did it. So we've done all these things. And do you think that capitalists who want to make the money, know the skills are here, know we've got the brains, do you think they're not going to invest in here? Aye, that'll be right.
Related to you, Tommy.
His mother.
However.
Most folk will now realise where I get my politics from.
However, you know, the passion that Alice just shared there is a Scottish passion. And I am sure that most of us here are Scottish, and we are passionate about being Scottish. And yet we are disagreeing about something. And I just want to highlight that, okay? So, who would like to... Will we just let Alice get away with it, eh?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe she's a mouthpiece for Tommy.
Yeah, maybe. You're marvellous.
I'd like to ask about what you think, Tommy, about the BBC's coverage of the independence debate, because I think it's been quite disgraceful. I think they've been focusing on Alex Salmond because they know a lot of Labour voters don't like him. And they'll say, I'm not going to vote for independence because I don't like Alex Salmond. But it's not about him. Well, it's about the country. And I wonder what you thought of that. I actually think STV have been a bit better than the BBC. I think it's disgraceful.
I've got to say, in all candour, that I think it's a bit frightening, the coverage that we've had, particularly from the BBC, but from the mainstream media as a whole. Frightening in that you hope for balance, don't you? You know that there will, at the end of the day, maybe be an editorial in a newspaper that says, you know, vote one way or the other. Mostly they'll say vote no, but you're hoping for balance. I watched the story last night about the Standard Life, and they did a Vox Pox in Edinburgh. Vox Pox is where you go out and you speak to the public. And they spoke to one person who said, oh, this is really bad, this is going to be really bad for Scotland. And I thought, oh, well, fair dues. And then they spoke to somebody else and they said, oh, this is terrible, this is really, really bad for Scotland. And I thought, wait a minute, that's two. Surely the next one will say aye, but it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be bullied. And then he spoke to a third one and it was, this is really bad for the Yes campaign, this will undermine the vote. And then they went to Douglas Fraser in the studio saying, aye, this is really bad. And I thought, wait a wee minute. This is supposed to be a balanced, reporting, responsible media organisation. It was completely and utterly unbalanced. Because for every one person, and there will be people genuinely saying, oh, I'm worried about that Standard Life, that's terrible. There'll be somebody else saying, how dare they? The same company that warned us about devolution, the same company that got fined 3 years ago for misleading its own customers is now trying to mislead the people of Scotland. There'll be some people will think like that, some people will think differently, but the BBC promote one side of it, and that's why I would appeal to those of you in here who are looking for some debate and answers. Go onto the social media, go onto the Facebooks and the Twitter. There are more debates genuinely getting held out there, and I think there's a groundswell of thirst for knowledge out there, and the mainstream media is by and large getting bypassed because of their bias.
Brian? What would you say to that?
Well, I think the one thing for certain is if there's a breakaway and we're in a separate Scotland, there will not be a BBC. So, there you are. If that's the direction you want to go, I don't think you're with the people of Scotland in that respect, I tell you that. But one thing I would say that Tommy has just made mention of, and it's quite a disgrace, is those cybernats that are hammering the hell out of individuals. All of that I don't think we need in this debate. I think it needs to be a balanced debate, where we have a debate as it is tonight, where we both are able to express our point of view without interruption in the main, and that's more important than anything that the BBC, ITV, STV or Sky are able to do. That's what's important to me, and I hope that we continue to have debates like this as we move towards the 18th of September, when you have that vote to make.
Thank you. OK, here's another question.
Thank you, Neil. I have to say I'm a wee bit disappointed tonight. I came here really undecided, right? And I'm not totally convinced either with what I've seen for the Yes campaign. But tonight I'm actually more, even more unconvinced about the No campaign, right? Because first quote for the fallen Braveheart, right? Not about patriotism or nationalism here, but he said, when they were all squabbling for the Shanks, for Longshanks table, he says, remember? And he said, there's a difference between me and you, he said to them. He goes, you think your position exists, people in this country exist to provide you with a position. But we think our position exists to provide you with freedom. You know, what I hear from Tommy, that's why the crowd are with him, is because there's a heart there that's saying, we want the best for the people. Now, none of us can actually say, Tommy or any of their well-educated friends, can he say that what we are going to do is, if we vote yes, it's all going to come together? Exactly. Right? But if we can commit and stop squabbling, and all I hear in that Scottish Parliament as well, I turn it off every time, because all I hear is over-educated guys criticising each other, right? Nothing getting really done about the real issues of the people on the street, the drug addicts, the guys that are depressed and defeated in life. And it's not about let's have this big passionate debate to actually sacrifice personal responsibility for everybody of the country to make the country happen itself. So that, to me, you know, I believe in what you're saying, Tommy, and I respect your spirit. I believe that you know, that's why people need to follow people like yourself who've got a heart for the country. I see the Queen and David Cameron. I believe that they've got a good heart as well. We can't just disregard them and dismiss them because of bad decisions they've made. But that's what I feel tonight.
Well, I mean, I think we're interested to hear that sort of perspective, folks, because there's clear yes and no's, and here's someone who's genuinely seems to be on the fence. Do you want to respond to that in any way? Just happy to hear that? Yep. Okay. Right.
Responded to sum up to that type of contribution. It was a very good contribution.
Yes, indeed. Excellent. Thank you. You're pointing me to someone. Who are you pointing me to? He's had his hand up that long, is it? There's quite a few folk who've had their hand up quite a long time. I'm sorry, folks. There's just so many. But we'll do our best to get round yous all. Okay?
My question is actually about big business, but before I go on, if I could just make a slight point about the BBC and what we heard last night. I agree with a great deal of what Tommy said in respect to standard life, etc. But the article last night in the BBC was actually worse than that, because they totally misreported what was actually on the Standard Life website. I would ask every single one of you to go and look at Standard Life website, what was said yesterday in relation to their operations after a yes vote in an independent Scotland, and compare it to what was reported on the BBC yesterday. I think you'll be shocked and stunned to actually see what the difference is.
Yep.
My question's about big business, and over the course of this campaign, we have heard repeatedly how big business is going to leave an independent Scotland after the yes vote and flock to England. So I thought it was quite refreshing today in today's news to hear from the Chief Executive of British Airways, who are quite clearly one of the most significant companies in the United Kingdom, from their Chief Executive, Willie Walsh, who, when asked the question about what
a yes vote would mean to British Airways. I presume in the expectation that it would follow the standard lifeline. He refreshingly answered, the Scottish Government would be good for business and the lowering of air passenger duty would be good for business and that would be good for British Airways. So is that not a good example of why we are not better together and that decisions made in Scotland for the benefit of the people of Scotland are actually essential to the prosperity of our country?
Well, let me just tell you the facts as far as British Airways themselves are concerned. They're about to withdraw all their engineering from Scotland. They're about to look at the whole question of moving the engineering into Poland. That creates today, that has some 8,000 jobs. That's not just in Scotland, that's a whole across of the United Kingdom. That's a problem as far as British Airways themselves are concerned. I know the issue of British Airways more than most people as the Chairman of Aviation in the House of Commons, and I can tell you that it's clear to me that British Airways will start operating as a hub out of Madrid, not out of Heathrow, which will be to the detriment of us all. And the only reason Willie Walsh, who isn't the Chief Executive of British Airways as it happens, but of a whole European airline, is saying what he's saying is he sees the advantage to his own company, and that is the air passenger duty, which I have passionately supported should be removed completely from all service across the United Kingdom. That's what I believe in, not in a self-centred way that he has said as an individual who's got lots to gain as a consequence of what he had as a point of view to make today. So you've picked a subject that I know most about, and I clearly tell you, that that's one of the reasons why I want to have us staying together and not separating and having a situation where we divide for them to conquer. That's the position as far as British Airways are concerned. It always has been and always will be.
Can I just say in relation to what the Chief Executive of Standard Life said yesterday and what Willie Walsh said today, I think you've got two peas in a pod. You've got two multi-millionaires who couldn't give a damn about anybody in Scotland. That's the reality. Willie Walsh is nothing but a trade union basher, somebody who would grind workers into the ground to make an extra penny out of them. And what he's got to say, I think, is of got absolutely no relevance to this debate. Neither has the Chief Executive of Standard Life got any relevance to this debate. The only people who have relevance in this debate is you. Absolutely. You've got power in your hands.
Absolutely. Just a chance here to respond.
I respect what you're saying, Tommy, and I'm certainly not going to stand up here and defend Willie Walsh. I mean, obviously he's not an altruistic individual who will clearly act in the interests of his own company. However, I just think it's curious that we keep being told that during the course of this campaign that all these big businesses will move away and will have nothing to do with independent Scotland, when quite clearly here's a man who said he's quite happy to make money in independent Scotland, and I think that's the point.
Sure.
Okay, right.
That's a good phrase in the service.
Coming round here, excuse me. Okay.
Do I need to stand up?
No.
Thank you. Right, this is my point here. I think that the No campaign are frightened because when Scotland initially moves away from the UK, it will destabilise the sterling. And I think there'll be a collapse, a very temporary collapse. Mr. Donohoe is suggesting there would be temporary stability. And if we can quietly, with dignity, hold the line and just ride through that, we might be the ones with most assets to have the stronger economy here, the stronger position. We might not want that pound sterling. We might want our own independent currency. Now, unfortunately, there's not enough information. The whole vote is going to hinge on the pockets of everyone. They're going to be frightened of losing their savings, and the people with the most money are going to be the ones who are frightened the most. So I think if we can all just, with dignity, just hold the line together, stand together and say, we can be very strong. Let's just ride the storm. It's going to come.
Yeah.
I think that's to be responded to by yourselves. Which one, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that because
if Scotland becomes a separate state, it will have different interests from the rest of the UK. And as I said earlier on, if the rest of the UK choose not to cooperate in a currency union with Scotland, there's nothing much we can do about it. And that does have implications, because we spoke about standard life, and I'm like Tommy, I will not be dictated to by these big millionaire capitalists. But as a trade unionist, I do represent real workers in real jobs. And I lay before you the facts like these. My union in the private sector represents large numbers of people employed in food factories, places like Nestle and Irvine and so on. We export 4 times as much from those food factories in Scotland to the rest of the UK as we do to the whole of the rest of the world put together. So I'm not saying any of these questions about currency and so on are insurmountable, but you need to understand it could potentially have an impact on those jobs. Secondly, if you look at things like the flight of capital, which was referred to earlier on, again, I'm not saying, and I mentioned this earlier on, I don't think Scotland is an economic basket case and couldn't survive. The question you need to ask yourself is, would we be better off or worse off? Not just looking at the political landscape, but looking at the economic landscape and the jobs landscape as well. And the reason why my union did vote to back the No campaign, not the Better Together campaign, but to back the No campaign, was because we had representations. We can talk about that if you like, but we had representations from workers across Scotland who were concerned about the impact of a yes vote on their jobs. So that's the reality. That's what we were guided by, and that's why I'm putting to you that you do need to consider.
Richard, did you have a ballot of the GMB members in Scotland?
No,
did you ballot your members?
Tommy, our members are having a ballot on the 18th of September with the rest of the population.
No's the answer. No's the answer. So the leaders of the GMB back the No campaign, not the members.
No, well, if... well, Tommy, look, I mean,
listen,
the elected...
Just a moment, Fiona. Okay. Sorry, let Richard respond. Thanks.
Yeah. The elected regional council, which is comprised of 80 representatives elected from all industries, from all parts of Scotland, took that decision. It wasn't taken by unelected officials.
Do you know how many
members have you got, Richard?
Sorry?
How many members have you got in Scotland?
60,000 members.
60,000. 80 people took the decision. There you go.
That's what you call representative democracy.
That's democracy.
Well, Tommy, when you were in the Scottish Parliament with 128 other MSPs, did that mean you didn't have any legitimacy because you didn't ballot 5 million people on every decision you took?
Right.
I don't think so.
I think we'll move on.
We'll move on. It's a wee bit different.
We'll just move on, Fiona. Sorry, we're just going to cut that one, okay? I think it's just getting too far.
Just to come back from something we heard earlier on about in the event of a yes vote, the SNP, the white paper. You seem to be assuming they'll be leading the negotiations. As one of the many Labour MPs that are set to Westminster, do you not see yourself having a role, Mr Donohoe? And if so, what was it you'd be looking to achieve?
Well, of course I've been involved in that. We were the ones that set up the Scottish Parliament in the first place, and we continue to have a role in that, and also in a role of the decision-making process. You know, there is this misunderstanding that by some means I happen to be a London MP. I'm a Member of Parliament for Ayrshire Central here in Scotland. I'm as Scottish as you are or anybody in this hall is, and I represent these views as I see fit, and I think that's the entitlement of you. It's also your entitlement, if you're a constituent of mine, to go to the ballot box at the next election and vote me out. In the period that I've been here, that hasn't happened. The people in this hall might take the view that they want to vote me out, but I can tell you that's not the view that's expressed and has been expressed at every general election that I've ever been involved in. So listen, take note that I'm here as a representative coming from Scotland in that respect. But there is one thing I would like to tell you, and it's a story about an investment that we lost. We lost to this area as a consequence of the uncertainties that there have been as a result of this referendum. It was GlaxoSmithKline themselves who decided that they would place their big investment into the northeast of England and not into Irvine, where I had been informed that it was most likely to be, it was the best site that was going to be. That, if it had come to Irvine, was going to create 1,500 construction jobs and 1,000 jobs to this area, well-paid jobs, all around about £50,000. Now that went as a result of the uncertainties as far as this referendum itself is concerned. And I don't want this to continue. Let me finish. I don't want that to continue. I want this referendum to be an answer that is either yes, solidly yes, or solidly no, so that we can put this argument to bed once and for all, so that we're in a situation where, again, we can look at the issues that are important to you and to my constituents. That's how the health service is working. That's how our education service is working. That's how the investment portfolios of companies are working. That's how the public services in general are working. That's what's important to me and will continue to be me as long as I represent you, and it's representing you from Central Ayrshire here in Irvine as well as the rest of my constituency.
It's a question to the No campaign, please. Proportionally, in the last century, more Scots died in every major British war than any other country in the United Kingdom, England, Wales, etc. Right now, there are interballistic missiles targeting Glasgow. Do you think that's would you rather to end those statistics or maintain the union? What would you rather have? No more dead Scottish boys from the poorest schemes in Glasgow and Iraq on the front line, or an independent Scotland? And are you really the nationalists here? Is it the British nationalists that are prepared to suffer these statistics and dead Scottish children? You know, I think that's a very...
Yeah, well, I'm not... I've been concerned for all of my adult life about what I would conceive to be economic conscription. In other words, working class young men and women who are forced because there are no job opportunities to consider a career in the military. So I share that concern. The other thing I have to say is, and Tommy and I go back a long way. We were at university together, and since that time, I've been a member of the campaign for nuclear disarmament. So I hold my hands up and say the policy of the Labour Party presently is not unilateral nuclear disarmament, but there are people in the Labour Party like me and the trade unions like me that are fighting for that, who wants to see investment in peace and not war. Of course I want to see those nuclear missiles, those nuclear submarines removed from Faslane and Coulport. Well, it's a false dichotomy, isn't it? Because I tell you what, the SNP taking you into a nuclear alliance actually makes it less likely than more likely that we'll get rid of those missiles from the Clyde.
OK, do you want to say something, Fiona or Tommy?
Very, very briefly, yet again, we have a very, very straightforward choice. And Richard and I do go back a long way, and I'm not going to disrespect him as an individual. I was hoping to say at the start of the night that I hoped this was going to be like a football match where we played it very hard and firm, but we played the ball and not the man. And I think what we've got to remember here is, regardless of what happens on 18th September, the next day we're still going to be neighbours, and we're still going to be living beside one another whether we've voted yes or no. So I think it is important that each and every one of us tries to raise our game and tries to understand that some people have got insecurities, some people have got fear, some people have got over that. But it doesn't make somebody better than somebody else. And I just make that appeal to you as a working class person, that we stick together as a class. What I would say to anybody who passionately believes in getting rid of these immoral weapons that are nothing more than a drain on the public purse, because they will never be used. They are the most expensive pieces of scrap metal on the planet, because as soon as they're used, the planet's finished anyway. Why spend £100 billion on scrap metal when you can spend it on the kids and the pensioners and the public services? If you believe in nuclear disarmament, I believe that is a reason in and of itself, regardless even of the democratic argument, which I think is so important. There's one reason on the 18th of September to go into whatever your polling station is and say,
I believe in Putin. Jobs before bombs. Kids before nuclear weapons. I'm voting yes.
Okay, someone was pursuing me and didn't feel able to speak their question. They've written it down. If this wasn't about oil and whiskey for the GB government, would this debate be happening?
Well, I don't know what you mean about the whiskey, I'll be honest, because, you know, the fact is that... unfortunately,
please, come on, let's listen.
Unfortunately, the whiskey industry in Scotland as it stands is all within the private sector, which is wholly owned by multinationals from other parts of the world and not from the United Kingdom. And also, it has to be said, are responsible for the generation of a tremendous amount of the gin that's drunk across the whole of the United Kingdom, and a lot of the vodka that's drunk across the whole of the United Kingdom as well. It's not just an industry in itself, but the one thing I will say for certain is that it supports the small villages and communities across the most needed areas of Scotland. And that, I think, is something that I continue to support, because it's big business to the small communities in which they work. And so therefore it is an important ingredient. But the fact is, I also argue that there should be less tax on both the spirits industry and across the whole of the industry itself, because clearly we are in a world that's ever shrinking, and as a consequence of whiskey being a product that's well received across the whole of the world, it's an interest to them to have the rates of income tax or tax on their product an awful lot less than it is. I would rather see a penny going on income tax and a pound coming off the bottle of whiskey than I would see the industry itself suffer as a consequence of the fact that they would find themselves in a position where the marketplace across the world is diminished as a result of those countries themselves starting to generate their own industries.
Fiona, you'd like to... Let's bring Fiona in, because you've not heard Fiona. Come on.
Okay, well...
That's a question.
Hang on a minute, mister, I'm speaking now.
So let Fiona speak, please.
I think, you know, that it's great to look at the industries that we've got now, but we have to kind of think about the future too. And one of the things that I think is really important is our capacity to think about green jobs. We've got, in this country, we could produce a quarter of all the world's wind power, and judging by what's been going on in here tonight, we've probably produced some of that already. But I think it's important, you know, that we remember it's not just about what's happening now, it's about what we're going to build for the future, what we can see we can do in the future, and definitely some of the green economy is something that we can develop.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. Well, I'm gonna move to. I'm really sorry, folks. And honestly, it's nothing personal. I've tried to move around the room and get as many folk asking questions as possible. We're going to move to the summation, okay? Yeah. So we're going for you guys first, Tommy and Fiona first.
No, you go.
Folks, I don't know if I'll need this or whatever, but can I just sum up by telling you a wee bit of a story in relation to the Scottish Parliament and why I think voting yes is so important. In the Scottish Parliament, I had the opportunity to raise a private members' bill. Sorry, Tony, can you speak through it? Because it's getting taped, sorry. I had the opportunity to raise a private members' bill in 1999 to abolish a practice called pindings and warrant sales. Some of you may be aware of this. Pindings and warrant sales were in place in Scotland for well over 100 years, and they were a very pernicious form of debt recovery, whereby those that were pursuing debt could break into somebody's house and sell their furniture for that debt. Never ever raised the debt, but they humiliated the person. That was used in Highland clearances. It was used during 1915 as a threat in relation to the increased rents during the First World War. And the Labour Party, indeed Keir Hardie, when the Independent Labour Party was formed in 1888, it was one of the first items in the manifesto was abolition of warrant sales. And you know, for about 30 or 40 years, Labour MPs went down to Westminster and they tried to raise bills to get rid of warrant sales. And Westminster gave them the rubber ear. There was no time for that. 1999, I was elected. I got the Govan Law Centre to draw up a private member's bill for me, and we put forward the bill to abolish pindings and warrant sales. To their eternal shame, the Labour Party opposed it, which was disgraceful. However, we fought on, and in 2000, we managed, for the first time, to win a vote in Parliament that wasn't predicted, because Parliament changed in the course of the vote and decided that it was time to get rid of pindings and warrant sales. In other words, without the Scottish Parliament, we would still have that medieval form of debt recovery. My point is that a year later, in 2002, I stood up in the Scottish Parliament and I said, if you think the Iraq war is about weapons of mass destruction, you better waken up and smell the oil, because that's what the Iraq war was all about. And the truth is, the moral of that story is, with the Scottish Parliament we can do good things. We can get rid of things like pindings and warrant sales. But when it comes to the really big issues, stopping working class kids getting sent for this country to fight for other people's interests, to spill their blood for big business. Mr. Blair, who didn't mind spilling blood as long as it wasn't his that was getting spilled. When it came to that, brothers and sisters, when it came to that issue, we didn't have the power because it was reserved to Westminster. Because what we've got in Edinburgh is a parental guidance parliament, PG. We can only see certain things and we can only talk about certain things. Brothers and sisters, I think we should have an adult parliament. A parliament that takes decisions on the rate of pensions, the level of the minimum wage, getting rid of nuclear weapons. A parliament that reflects the opinions of the people of Scotland. I hope each and every one of you, and I know we're not going to all agree,
1 minute,
because there are some people here who don't think that it's viable or don't think it will be better, and you're entitled to your opinion. There's no doubt about that. But for those of you who believe, and it is a leap of faith, brother, there is no dotting I's and crossing T's here. There is no certainties. The only certainty is a no vote is another £25 billion worth of cuts, because it doesn't matter whether it's Labour or the Tories, they're going to implement the cuts. They're going to do what they've done since 2008. Austerity, brothers and sisters. The definition of austerity is punishing the poor for the crimes and the greed of the rich. I think we've got a chance on September 18th to do something different. Please grasp that opportunity. Please stand up and be counted. Put hope over fear. Let's vote yes. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tommy. Richard. Richard.
Well, I want to begin by...
Right, folks, please let's listen. Please listen.
I want to begin, actually, by saying that compared to some other debates that I've been involved in, this has been a very civilised, comradely discussion. And I thank all those people that have approached it in that manner. Because these are important issues where we need light as well as heat. to illuminate our debates, whether it's from a left perspective or from a centre perspective or from a whatever political perspective. We need to have an understanding. And my argument, my central argument to people like Tommy and Fiona, who represent a socialist strand of thought, is this: that if socialism means anything, it's not just political democracy we need, it's economic democracy we need. And by going for a separate Scottish state, you are turning your back not only under the SNP's proposals, which have been clearly exposed as the formation of some kind of sub-state to the rest of Britain, when you look at the currency plans and so on, but also if you ignore where corporate power lies and where we as a labour and trade union movement need to organise, you're missing the chance to get your hands on those levers. You're turning your back on those levers. Now, I just want to say a couple of other things. First of all, we probably do have a shared perspective, and that is that it's not enough simply to give people sovereignty for 15 hours one day later this year. We should be rolling out power to people on a day-in, day-out basis, so that we're shifting power back to working people from those in powerful positions that currently hold it. Tommy has talked about fear. Understand why he's saying that. But I have to say to you, comrade, that you are also planting the seeds of fear when you're saying that there will be 2 more years, 5 more years of austerity, no matter what happens if you vote no. Because we know that's not the case. Take the long view. Take the long view. Take the long view. Don't go into the ballot. Don't go into the polling stations on the 18th of September based simply on George Osborne's propped up by Nick Clegg's austerity measures. It's broader than that. It's broader than that. When Labour, and I recognise this won't be a popular thing to say, but I'm going to say it, when Labour was in power and Gordon Brown was the Chancellor, he increased significantly public expenditure. In real terms, public expenditure on the health service doubled in 10 years between 1997 and 2007. Now, you can shout that down, but it's true. It's true. So don't take your decision based upon a narrow view of 1 year, 2 year, or simply on a narrow view of this policy or that policy. Take it on the broader canvas that I think you need. And I'll say this, and I'll say it again. Tommy, as always, has presented his argument forcefully, passionately, and in a way that many people in the room will admire. But it ain't Tommy, it'll be Alex Salmond that'll be negotiating the new Constitution of Scotland. Yeah. And you can be in denial about that all you like. You could wish it were different leaving this hall tonight, but you know in your heart of hearts that it won't be. So base your decision on the real choices before you, the SNP's white paper or the chance to build an alternative socialist future, the kind of society I think most people in here want to live with. And I'll concur with Tommy to say this, that no matter what happens on the 18th of September, no matter which way the vote goes, those of us on the left of politics, in the trade union movement, in the labour movement in its broadest sense, in the socialist movement, do need to stick together. We do need to work together, because in the end, we do have a shared vision of an equal society, a democratic society, a society where people do have something to believe in. Fight the good fight, keep the faith. That's what Jimmy Maxson said. That's what we need to do, whatever happens on the 18th of September.
Thank you, Richard. Fiona.
Okay,
Shh. Let's listen, please.
I just want to respond to some of the points that Richard just made there, which are just astonishing, to use somebody's "I'm astonished." But when Gordon Brown did increase the money to the NHS, I wonder where he got it from. He robbed it out the pension fund of the civil servants, and he robbed it out of the budget for the civil service, where he sent 104,000 people down the road. I mean, for him to come up here and talk like that, it's just, it drives me nuts. But when he says that keep the faith, We kept the faith in Labour for 13 years. They promised us to take away the anti-trade union laws. I mean, my dad said something. We've been waiting for Labour to do something for us for 100 years. I mean, one of the things that surely is getting my goat is the inability of the no side to actually say what it is they're going to do for us if they ever do manage to get back in power, which at the moment isn't looking very likely, listening to their arguments. What I would like them to do is to get up off their knees, start talking about how they're going to defend us, defend our wages, raise our standard of living, renationalise all the utilities under our control, not under some fat cats that are living down in London. And I'm sick hearing about the private sector tonight because women are working in the public sector and they're working like dogs in the public sector. There are nurses, there are all the public services, the social workers and all the rest of it. That's where women's jobs are, and that's where the cuts are happening. I'm sick to the back teeth of how women's place is never ever listened to. The majority of the members in my union are women. The majority of the public services are carried out by women. And I know that when you look at things, it was on the telly a couple of weeks ago, the Dagenham workers, how they fought, the struggles that have been taken by women. And that's what we have to do as well. We have to join together. Working class people have to join together and fight like mad before this referendum. You know why? Because we've got a wee window here, a chance of hope, as Tommy says. We can really push that door at the moment. It's opened a crack for us to take something for ourselves. And what we've got to do is we've got to boot that door down. I'm sick of being told to wait for these people in the suits at the end there. I really am. To say that nothing's going to happen, and if we keep in the UK, everything's going to be okay. There's £39 billion of cuts coming, and Ed Balls is the person that said that he's going to do that. The leader of the Labour Party has said that he's going to have an economic commitment for the next 2 years, and £12 billion of that is going to be cut off your welfare budget. And that lady that brought that up at the back, that's what's going to happen to disabled people and the poor. They'll be cut and cut and cut until there's nothing left.
1 minute.
So, there is a substantially different picture if you vote yes. One of the things that you do know is that you're not going to have a further 2 years of austerity. That is what you are guaranteed if you vote no in this campaign. I'm just going to leave it at that. I mean, there is really nothing else to say. What we all have to do is trust in ourselves and what we can achieve as people, not some fancy corporations or people that want to talk about economics constantly. We have to think about how we can actually change this country to suit us working class people. That's it. Thanks. Good night.
Thanks, Fiona. Brian. Please, let's listen. Let's listen.
Can I just
excuse me? Let's listen, please. Come on.
Thank you very much, Neil. Can I just start by thanking all you for coming this evening? It's been a very entertaining evening and one that I've enjoyed being part of. I've also got to take note of the fact that it's not only here this evening that this debate is going to be heard, but on Sunday I understand it will be heard by some 8,000 people across the network as far as the local radio station itself is concerned. And of course it will also be well reported, I'm sure, in the local press for those who haven't been able to come this evening to be able to listen to and make comment about what they've heard this evening. As I've already said, I think it's a case that to achieve any power, you must get the third of the vote in the middle to agree with your politics. That is fundamental in any life that I've been involved in terms of politics. It's the same here. There's a third of the people still to make up their mind, and that needs to be garnished as far as support is concerned by either side. And on the basis of a balanced viewpoint, it's for you, the people who are undecided, to determine how you think this evening has gone and as to whether or not you believe the arguments that have been presented on either side are worthwhile to vote come the 18th of September. That's what's important to me. Now, there are those that are on the platform that are saying, that it's all important for the public service. I represent not just those who are employed in the public service. I was passionate about them because I used to represent them for some 12 years. But I also understand, having represented those in the private sector, that their jobs and their future all depends on the vote as it happens on the 18th of September. And that, to me, is equally as important as those within the public sector here tonight. Now, the one question I have to ask myself is, where are the SNP? Why are they not on the platform tonight? That's the big question tonight. They're my opponents. They're the ones who should be here tonight. They're the ones that are going to answer to you. They're the ones that will take the decisions after the 18th of September. It won't be Tommy, that's for certain, and it won't be us. It will be the ways of Alex Salmond, and that's why I am so disappointed that the SNP have decided not to come along this evening. A long time ago, I gave up believing Santa Claus was some time ago that I thought that Santa Claus was for real. And since then, as a consequence of that, I've been very disappointed. To hear Tommy, it's as though we've got Santa Claus in the room tonight, promising you the earth, when in actual fact the reality is it's down to one party come the 18th of September if the vote is yes, and that's the SNP. Utopia comes to mind if you're listening to Tommy and the brand of socialism that he's spouting tonight. It's clear to me that the issue is not a case of those that are in Tommy's party or his allies. The case is there for the whole of the United Kingdom to determine what the future is, and for Scotland and you as the people to determine whether or not you vote yes or no come the referendum. I want to see Scotland play its part in the UK politics. I want to see us sitting and continuing to sit at the top table. Not so long ago, every leader of every UK party, every major party in the whole of the country was a Scot. We already punch above our weight. We've heard from Alice about what we did and how we've invented things over the years. I want that to continue, but I want it to continue as part of the United Kingdom. I don't want that with barriers and put in place. I want to have a nation that's a nation of families, a family of nations bound together with common purpose to maintain a standard of living that we have the responsibility to pass to our children and to our grandchildren. This is not just a decision for today or tomorrow or next week or next year. This is a decision that will take years and generations to overcome if you vote in a certain way. That's what I say to you has got to be considered as a family of nations. We live in a world that's shrinking in size in every respect, as far as communication is concerned, as far as its travel is concerned, and where the next generation will work and play. That's the position as far as the position of voting yes is concerned. It will create a barrier to that possibility. That's why I believe in separating our nation from the rest of the United Kingdom will be all bad. I say that, I believe that, and I hope that you do when you go to the ballot box on the 18th of September. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Folks, a big thank you to all who... Shh, please, guys. No. No. I think what we... Shh, please. Please.
They were invited.
Right. Sorry, folks. Can we move on and thank the Party at the front here, Brian Donohoe, Joan MacDonald, Richard Leonard and Tommy Sheridan. Give them a huge round of applause. And also, on everyone's behalf, can we thank Alison McCluskey of Early Bird Social Media, who have sponsored tonight, and Sandy Clark for organising it.
Well done, Sandy.
And also to Irvine Beat FM for helping out with the spreading the word. And what we are all agreed about, I'm sure, folks, is that come the September the 18th, we have a very important decision to make, have we not? Yes. All the very best.
Well done, Neil. Well done.
Vote thanks to the chair, Neil, here, everybody. It was a hard job tonight.
Well done, Neil. Excellent.